Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. So welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Dr. Norman Rosenthal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I just have to say, I'm very, very much looking forward to this show today. You are the guy that coined the term, the man, seasonal affective disorder. And this is a term that I learned growing up in Rochester, New York, under a cloud for 9 months of the year. And I could never understand why, for most of my life, I would feel sad or even slightly depressed or tired. I was so tired for so much of my life. And then the summer would come and we moved down to the lake house that we had. And I thought, oh, it must be because it's just the summer and it's time for the lake and we're out of school and it's so much fun. But what I learned was many people that live really in the north or in a cloudy area that's cloudy most of the year might have something called seasonal affective disorder. So your work really saved my life in so many different ways because I learned what was happening with me. Why did my mood slide? And then why did it get better? And when I learned this term, SAD, seasonal affective disorder, my life made sense. So thank you so much for your work.
Makes me very happy every time I hear this.
Yeah. Because I never, and so many of us living in upstate, we didn't know. We're like, gosh, there's another rain cloud or or snow because it snows so much up there as well. But so how did you discover this? Like, what was your journey like? And even realizing that, wait, this is actually a thing. What happened?
Well, a big part of it was that I came from South Africa. So when I arrived in the northern United States, I had never encountered the kind of winters that I found here. Mm-hmm. And straight away, I knew something different was going on. I'd never felt that sort of slowing down and lethargy, fatigue that you describe that I had felt, never had felt before, what I was feeling now. So I thought, what's going on? And I felt this 3 cycles in a row. And then I came from Colombia. I did my training in New York City. I came down to the National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, and that's where I encountered people who had this problem worse than I did. And I thought, wow, there's something going on here. And from there, it was a bit of a detective story to figure out that it was the light that was driving the cycles of mood. And that led to the whole 20 years of research there and the development of light therapy as a way of treating it.
So what was that like for you to figure out, like, wait a minute, this has to have something to do with the sun? So you discovered that it must be living with such cloudiness or lack of sun. What did you do at that point for yourself? I mean, was there light therapy when you discovered this, or is that something that you also?
There was no light therapy. I started treating myself with light immediately at the same time as I started doing the controlled studies. Because, you can't just come out with a new treatment. I mean, you can, and people do it all the time, but if you're a scientist, you have to subject it to the proper testing, which we did. My group and we did that and gave people the light exposure in different ways, different times of day, the bright versus the dim. And one study, it was a very funny study, In one condition, we had people covering their eyes, and in another condition, they covered their skin. And we found that it was coming in through the eye, not the skin.
Wow.
So we did all kinds of studies. We looked at different colors of light, found that green was more powerful than red. So all of these things figured out that it was a real effect. It wasn't just a placebo, that it was coming in through the eyes, that was most powerful in the morning, and that it was safe and effective. And this was then replicated by other people, and that has established it as a viable treatment for a viable condition.
So where did you get the light from? Was there already, or did these lights exist? Or were you just in front of a light bulb? Like, how did you?
The lights didn't exist, but what we did was we took ceiling lights, you know, the fluorescent boxes
Yeah.
on the ceiling,
Yeah.
and we just put them horizontal and had people sit in front of them. Now, of course, there's such a variety of commercial lights, much more attractive than sitting in front of a 3-foot wide ceiling light.
So true.
And they're attractive, they are safe, they're effective, and that is what we use these days. And there's a wide variety available online. You can order them, but I would just counsel you don't go too small. They should be of a certain width and height, maybe 1.5 feet wide by a foot high or something like that. Because they're these teeny weeny ones that they say are as good, but they really haven't been tested properly.
And then you had mentioned that the green light is beneficial, but I've never seen, do they sell the green light? I've never
No,
seen
they
that.
don't.
Okay.
It was just our way of breaking the spectrum down into different colors to see, does the spectrum, does it coincide with where the eye is known to be most sensitive? And it did.
Wow.
The regular light is just white light.
So then how long does it take for someone, like, is everyone different? So would some people need to sit for 10 minutes and other people an hour? Like how would someone know how long to sit?
It's variable, so that for some people within a couple of days of 20 to 30 minutes of light, which is what you usually start with, within a couple of days, they're already feeling better. Others may take a week or two.
Okay.
I know I have my own lights right here by my desk because it's been winter, and I can feel it almost immediately when I start using it.
So interesting. So now, do you use your light year round, or do you just use it when you start feeling bad, or how often should people use this light?
By now, I've learned when I need the light. So I will use it through the winter months. But how much I use depends on what kind of a day it is. If it's a cloudy day, I'll turn it on. If it's a sunny day, I may not need it. Everybody's different.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. So tell us, what exactly is happening? Is it depression that's happening? Is that what's kind of coming in? I think about, like, in San Francisco, the fog that sort of sets in. That's how it felt to me living in Rochester. It was like it's sort of like a gray fog that would move in, and I just couldn't get out of it until it got sunny again, like in the spring or summer months. But what's happening inside the body or the brain that creates this depression, or what is it?
Well, it is happening through the eye and its connections to the brain. And the hypothalamus is a part of the brain that's very influential. And that is how we think this thing is working, and that is how we think the light is reversing it. But I must tell you, when it first came out, it was quite controversial. A number of my colleagues thought it was a big joke. And actually, I should mention, I don't know if you have it down there, that I have a new book out because I've written a number of books, including Winter Blues, which is my classic book on seasonal affective disorder.
Right.
That's right. That's it.
Yep.
But I also have a new book called Poetry RX, which is right there in your hand.
Anyone that's watching on YouTube, here it is. Go get it.
The reason I'm mentioning it is that there was a poem see, when we first were looking for people who had seasonal affective disorder, I knew we needed a whole group of people to define the syndrome and realize that it was a real syndrome, and then to do the studies.
Mm-hmm.
So we put an article in the Washington Post. A wonderful journalist was kind enough to think it worth putting an article on the subject, and it got syndicated across the country. There was no internet at that time.
Wow.
So we got 3,000 letters from all over the country. And I opened one letter, and out of the letter tumbled a poem by Emily Dickinson that really made me realize, it affirmed my belief that I was dealing with a real entity, despite the contempt that I encountered from many of my colleagues.
Yeah.
Her poem is, there's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons that oppresses, like the heft of cathedral tunes. And it just tumbled out of the letter, and it's since become a favorite of mine. And so that is a connection there that might be of interest to you. Another connection is when we first randomized our people with seasonal affective disorder into people who were getting the bright light and people who were getting the dim light. I didn't know which light people were getting, but a woman came in after maybe a week of using light. She came into the unit, and she'd been so down and looked so miserable, and now she was just glowing.
Wow.
And so I didn't know what her condition was, but she said, "Oh, this is amazing. What a discovery, blah, blah, blah." And it reminded me of a poem I'd read by John Keats, which starts, "Much have I traveled in the realms of gold." You know, he talks about traveling through the Greek Isles. And he talks about reading a new translation of Homer, which was so exciting to him that it reminded him of the experience of discovery of the planet Uranus had just been discovered by Herschel. And he said, it's like when a new planet, when an astronomer is looking up there and a new planet swims into his ken, or like the stout Cortez, the conquistador, when with his men he first saw the Pacific Ocean, you know, from a peak in Darien, which I think is in Panama. So in any event, that reminded me of this experience, because you're seeing for the first time a law of nature unfolding itself.
Yeah.
People responding to light with exuberance. Whereas previously you'd only seen light as a vehicle for vision. Now you saw it as a vehicle for well-being.
Wow.
And that opened up a whole realm of gold for me. And so the creativity has been really, you know, when you say, you know, what is my main pathway in life, it's been to try to find creative ways of helping people, whether it's light, whether it's poetry, whether it's Botox. We've done some studies, a colleague and I, where we find that if you paralyze the frown lines in depressed people, that's better than just with the Botox. That's better than just salt water, saline.
Really?
So, yeah, really.
What happened? So you're saying the 11 lines?
The 11 lines.
The 11 lines right here.
Yeah, colleague came to me. I was running a clinical research organization, but now I was past being at the NIH. I was running a clinical research organization, and he really took me through a long history whereby people from Darwin on down had said that our facial muscles are not only an expression of our mood, but they're actually an influence on our mood. Wow. So that it goes both ways. It's a bilateral influence, mood, brain, facial muscles, to and fro. And he said, look, I've got this idea that if we use Botox, we'll paralyze the frown muscles, which Darwin called the grief muscles. We'll paralyze them and we will take away their depressing effects on the brain.
Wow.
And let's do it in, would you like to do it in a controlled study? I said, would I like to do that study? That is just
Yeah.
the perfect study because it's got a hypothesis, it's got a history to it, it's got a way of testing it blind, double blind. And that's what we did. And in 74 patients, the Botox beat the saline hands down.
Wow. I have never heard of that. That's insane. Oh my gosh. Okay, so women and men, go get the 11 done.
Women and men, and I have actually, I'll tell you, I've never confessed this on the air before. But I have myself had Botox during my winter down phases and cheered myself up that way.
So it's the facial muscles. So this is not even a chemical. I mean, it's not a chemical reaction. You're saying if you paralyze the frown lines or your face's ability to frown,
right,
it changes your emotional state.
Yes.
That's crazy. I love that.
If you think of it from an evolutionary point of view, let's say we've got a monkey or a chimp that's part of a troop.
Yeah.
And the chimp is on the edge of a cliff and he looks down the cliff and he sees a lion is coming up. Immediately his face registers terror and he turns towards his troop and they see his face and immediately they, with mirror neurons, which are the neurons in the brain that copy the neurons of the other monkey, person, chimp. With mirror neurons, they immediately register the terror without a cry having been called, and they all run away. It can be a survival mechanism.
Interesting.
Or if the monkey sees a bunch of bananas and shows whatever monkeys show when they're happy, then maybe everybody comes running to get the bananas. So in any event, that was another example of how I've just jumped on creativity. And so now I have a story as to how Poetry RX came to be written, how my creativity in trying to help people, they're all trying to help people feel better. That's the unifying theme. And one night, a colleague, a friend, called me and said he was really down in the dumps. He had lost someone he loved, and it was devastating to him. And I tried to think of something I could say that would make a difference. You know, oftentimes cliches come to mind at such a time, but I thought he deserved better than that. So I said, he was an artist. So I said, you know, losing is an art. And like any art, it can be developed. And he said to me, have you read that poem? I said, which one? He said, One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. And it was all about losing being an art. I have it here, but I don't know whether it's worth reading, but it's a beautiful poem for anybody who's interested in learning how to lose and how to get over loss. And he read it to me. And as he read it, I could hear his voice lifting. He got more and more cheerful. And you know, I felt it as well. And I thought, wow, a poem can make people feel better. Hey, light can make people feel better. Botox can make people. Good company, a great podcast, a great interviewer, all of those things can make you feel better. And so can poetry.
It really is. It's a book of healing. I love it. I love Rumi so much. And I saw some of the Rumi poem. I love The Guest House. So beautiful. So tell me about when you said hypothalamus, you didn't say that and maybe this is part of it, I don't know, but when you said it affects the hypothalamus, you didn't say it affects the neurotransmitter. So does it affect the neurotransmitters?
Yes.
We have this light. Okay, that's what I was curious. Okay.
They have now shown that even in animals, light coming into the eye, of course, we know it has visual effects. It helps you see, but it has non-visual effects. And they've further been able to divide those non-visual effects into effects on sleep and biological rhythms, but also effects on mood. So they've been able to trace out the circuitry that involves light being transduced into mood. And this works via neurons that are connected to each other and that communicate with each other via neurotransmitters. One of the neurotransmitters we suspect is really important in this regard is serotonin. You've heard a lot about that.
Yeah.
But it could also be dopamine or norepinephrine. So,
Right.
or other things that we don't even suspect right now. But in any event, we have every reason to believe that light coming in through the retina impinges on neurons that transmit signals back towards the hypothalamus and other areas of the brain that are responsible for influencing mood.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Curious to know, did you ever study someone's childhood? And if why is it that some people are affected by SAD and other people are not? So I know a lot of people in Rochester, some people, nothing. Me and other people I know affected. So why is there a difference?
Well, it runs in families.
Oh, it does.
Yes, so we
Okay.
definitely think it's got a genetic component, and we've studied children with the problem.
Okay.
It also seems to be sensitive to hormones because in little girls, as they pass through puberty, the incidence of SAD jumps, which doesn't happen in boys, by the way. I mean,
Wow.
boys can get it, but it's not triggered by puberty like happens in girls. So it's genetic, it's got hormonal influences, it's got environmental influences because, for example, let's say that you have a very intense job or a very intense workload. Say you're cruising through winter and you are susceptible, and suddenly your boss comes and says, I need this by Monday, and it's a huge project, and you're slowed down. So your brain is not in a good place to rev up and get going. That could make you more depressed. So it's genetic, it's hormonal, and it's environmental.
When you say environmental in that way, I think of stress hormones. So that's probably has a negative effect of SAD, correct? So if I'm very stressed and I've got the stress hormones,
right,
it's making me out of balance. So that would make a lot of sense.
Exactly. Definitely. It would definitely be a factor. That's why I've always suggested that people with SAD should not undertake major projects that have got like a winter delivery date.
Yeah.
Try to get a summer delivery date so that you can finish the project at a time when you are at your best.
Interesting. So how common is seasonal affective disorder?
We estimate it to affect about 5% of the adult population. And for every one that's got seasonal affective disorder, there are 2 or 3 who have a lesser form, which we call, say, the winter blues.
Okay. So the winter blues would be like a mild case.
Yeah.
And then seasonal affective disorder can it not mimic major depression? It can be pretty bad.
This is an easy mistake to make, to dichotomize the situation between SAD and major depression, because SAD is actually a form of major depression. One of the criteria for SAD is that the people have got to meet the severity level of major depression.
Okay.
The key is not whether it's bad or whether it's not bad. The key is when does it happen? And if it happens every winter, chances are it's SAD.
That's interesting. It sounds like the percentage is so low. Is that in the United States or is that worldwide? What is
5% in the United States, have got SAD.
Okay.
No, it's a good number, 1 in 20, plus
Yeah.
another 2 or 3 who've got a
Okay.
lesser form. It's really common.
Okay. Yeah. It seems like it's very common, but if you draw a line down the middle of the United States horizontally, it seems like it's obviously more in the north than in the south,
Oh,
clearly,
of
because
course,
there's
yes,
sun,
that's
right?
right. Sure, absolutely.
But also, my husband was in grad school over in England for a year, and yeah, I started getting worried about him when he was over there around Christmas time a couple years ago because it was during COVID, and he was locked in his flat with his roommates, but they couldn't leave. He said, "Mom, it's so gray here all the time." I said, "Please order yourself a light. I will pay for it. Just get the light." And he said it helped him so much because I
Oh,
could tell
that's
his mood.
wonderful.
Yeah, his mood was going down. And
Yeah,
then,
well, England
yeah,
is very far north, and because
yeah,
it's an island, it's got very cloudy weather.
yeah, yeah.
So it's a difficult climate for people with this problem, and that's why they've embraced SAD, and there was a huge SAD association in Great Britain.
Mhm. Oh,
But
I'm
then, of course, the
sure.
internet came along, and they didn't need an association anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy to have you on because I really don't think people understand what happens in winter months. And my son moved, my other son, my younger son moved to Washington State, to Olympia near Seattle, of course. And everyone knows Seattle is raining and cloudy quite a bit of the time, not every day, but lots of rain and clouds. But he was in Olympia. Then he moved to Portland. And I was worried about him as well. His mood just started to drop, drop, drop. And he just last week moved to Santa Cruz, California. And after 3 days there, he said to me, because I would look at the weather every day for him when he was in Portland, and it was like cloudy, raining, clouding, raining. I said, "Oh my gosh, this kid." And he moved to Santa Cruz and he said, "Mom, there's this big bright thing in the sky." He says,
Mhm.
"I feel so happy all the time." And it's just been 3 or 4 days. And I said, "I know, right? It's called the sun, and you haven't seen it in a long time." But I also for Christmas bought him a light being in Portland. And he said that really helped him. So it really affects people. And I don't think they know that it's an actual thing. Like,
Mhm.
yes, it's cloudy, but it's called seasonal affective disorder or winter blues. And we really need to be mindful of this and take good care of ourselves. Do you recommend? I'm curious. I understand that during the summer months, I even notice my mood right now, living in North Carolina in Charlotte,
Mhm.
and now, thank goodness, because when it gets dark at 4:30, holy moly, I feel myself get not only truly sad or I'm cranky. I get annoyed very easily and during the winter months because I can't, I want to go out and exercise. I love to go for walks every day. And I don't want to go walk in the dark when it's freezing cold and it's 4:30. It's dark at 4:30. So, but do you recommend that people look at the light year round, even though there's sun, or do we not need to have that light on our desk? If we know that we're going to be affected, is there a way to like build up the serotonin or dopamine in our system? So when winter comes, it's a little less intense for us, the sad, or do we just use it when we feel sad?
You can't tank up like you're filling up a gas tank with light. It
Like,
doesn't work
okay,
that way.
that's what I was
You
wondering.
have to use it when you need it. But I find that walking outdoors on a bright winter day is fantastic,
Okay.
and I thoroughly recommend it.
So yeah, that was another question. So what's the level of light? Because clearly in the summer months, the lighter is more intense, or where there's more, all of those things in the summer months. But in the winter, the sun's further away. But so is walking outside again without sunglasses. I remember reading one time, take your sunglasses off. You need that light in your eyes. Is that true?
Well, yes, I would say so, with a caveat, and that is, firstly, how much light do you need? I'm a great believer in training yourself to realize when you're getting enough light.
Mm,
When are you down in the dumps?
mm,
When are you a pain in the neck?
mm-hmm,
Because even though obviously the person with SAD is suffering, to other people, they can often be annoying. because they can't do this and they can't do that. And the spouse really needs to know that this is a real problem and there are things you can do to make somebody feel better. They're not trying to be irritating.
Right.
So you can do many things that will help, including walking outside, but I would be careful about not wearing, what I do, let me tell you what I do, and then you can see if it makes sense. I wear a hat, and I wear a hat both to protect my skin, but also to protect my eyes. But I get a lot of light coming in from the sky. And so you get the best of both worlds. You get enough light to feel good, but you don't, the sunlight, of course, has got UV light on. So I think if it's dazzling, if there's snow out there, then you might want to wear the sunglasses, because off of snow, if you're snowing on a sort of high up, you're getting tons of UV light. You want to block that. So you have to play this balancing game, and you have to use your own internal compass to figure out how much you need.
What about supplementation? Do you find that that's beneficial, or is it just the light?
Well, I think most of us need extra vitamin D.
Yes, I
Because
agree.
vitamin D is synthesized by the skin under the influence of UV light. And what we've learned is that UV light is harmful to the skin as it is to the eyes. So we put a lot of sunblock on our hands, our face. We wear special clothing that is sun protective.
Right.
And so we're probably not getting enough vitamin D being synthesized. We're also probably not getting enough in our diet. So vitamin D supplementation is something I do and I recommend to my patients. That said, it's not going to be a substitute for the visible light that you need for SAD.
True. That makes a lot of sense. What do you think, or in your studies, you don't think, you probably know this fact, in the United States, what did you find, or did you find what the worst state was when it comes to SAD? Was there one state that just really?
You know, we never looked at it those ways, but I would say that we did looked at latitude. So we had one center in Florida, we had the NIH in Maryland, we had New York, and we had right up in New Hampshire by the Canadian border. And we found that the further south you went, the lower the incidence of SAD, like 1.5%. Whereas when you got up to the Canadian border, it was like 9%. So latitude definitely affects the picture, but I think that the cloud cover will also affect the picture. And you were talking about Seattle. If you've got a very cloudy environment, atmosphere, because you're right by the water, you're on the Puget Sound or something, body of water, then you will have a lot of darkness. So these are factors, but we never actually measured it state by state.
Interesting. So if I'm in an office and it's sunny outside, is that enough light? Or
probably not.
Okay.
Probably not, because
I'm thinking of people even like lower than or even in North Carolina or lower, where there is more sunlight outside. But if I work all day inside, even if I have a window, you still think we should get the light?
I think you should, and I think you should take, you can get up a little earlier in the morning and go for a walk outside. You can go for a walk at lunchtime. You know, instead of sitting eating a sandwich by your desk, you might want to go and eat it by a bench in the park or something like that.
Okay.
I'm a great believer in the value of natural light, I guess is one way of putting it.
Okay. And is it multiple times a day if I'm suffering with this? Multiple times a day or no?
You know, I think a lot of times we're limited by our work schedule, but I'll just tell you what I do. I try and go for a walk in the morning. This is a winter day. I go for a walk in the morning, and usually this, you know, it's out. I don't get up that early. And then I go for a walk at lunchtime. And I try to do 3 morning, midday, evening. Perfect. You know, if you had a dog, that's what you would be walking your dog probably. So Think about it that way. If you can walk your dog 3 times a day, you can walk yourself as well.
And that's brilliant. I love that. So I'm thinking about somebody that they get up really early in the morning and maybe they go to a gym or they're at a home gym and it's still dark, and then they go to work and then they're in an office. So they're not going outside. So they've got a light on their desk. Is the light on the desk, do you have to stare in it or do you just put it off to the side just so it's on?
You
How does
don't
that
have to
work?
stare at it, because
Okay.
as long as, I mean, it's no good. I had one patient, I told her to, put the lights just close to her, and she came back and she said, the lights, it doesn't do anything for me. I said, where did you put the light? She said, I put it behind my head. I guess I should have said, don't put it behind your head, but I've never heard anybody who did that before.
Got to let it hit your eyes.
Got to hit your eyes, got to be in front of you. So, but you don't have to stare at it, no.
So just as long, I'm thinking of putting one like off the corner, on the corner of my desk, just leave it on.
Well, it then becomes a question, if it's like there, like 10 or 15 degrees away, 30 degrees, 90 degrees, the more it gets further and further, the more you're going to be like my lady who had it behind her head. So you don't want it too much to the side, but it doesn't have to be smack in front of you.
I'm thinking about all of us that do Zoom calls with our ring lights, those big ring lights in front of us. Isn't that the same kind of light?
They're very dazzling. Do you find them comfortable?
They're a little bright.
Yeah,
they're a little bright. But is it the same light? Like, is that affecting us?
No, it's not the same light. The light that we use is diffused over a surface.
Okay.
The ring light is by definition a bright ring.
Yeah.
I would be intrigued, actually. You can tell me offline what kind you use, because they're always too bright for me.
I agree. It's too bright. Like they hurt my eyes, but it's interesting. So my eyes are very sensitive to the sun. So if I'm out in the sun, I'm like this all the time. Like it's hard for me. So I have to always wear sunglasses. So I'm wondering, like, maybe I should get the
But
light.
if you think of those ring lights, you are directing the most sensitive part of your retina right into the vortex of those ring lights. I wonder if it's even good for your eyes.
I wonder long term what's going to happen to our eyes with these ring lights, because everyone's
use it repeatedly. Maybe
right?
That's a good idea.
So how does someone tell the difference between SAD and just having the winter blues, just the milder version? What's the difference?
Well, I think a good way of looking at it is functioning. Is it interfering with your function? And if your work is suffering, or your relationships are suffering, or your health is suffering, those would all be indications that you may be dealing with SAD. Certainly anybody who thinks life is not worth living anymore, that would make you think it's sad. Let's flip over to the other side of the spectrum with the winter blues. Now it's a question of performance. I mean, is it, I often, when I'm speaking with a journalist, I know as a fellow writer, you want your writing to be wonderful. You want it to dazzle. You want it to sparkle. You want it to be creative. And sometimes it is. Guess what? When you've got winter blues, it isn't. You read it and you know it's not your best work, but you just don't know how to fix it because you just haven't got the juice to get the product. That's when you might have the winter blues, or you struggle to get it in by deadline. And so it's not like anybody's going to say they've got a disorder, however, you also know you're not your best self. So the SAD is when you have a kind of a disorder because it's affecting your functioning. Winter blues is when you're not your best self.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So what are the months where you notice? Tell me at what month do people start saying, uh-oh, something's not quite right? Like, is it October? Like, what are the highest months that you see this seasonal affective disorder?
Well, it often starts in October. It can start earlier than that. Some people can feel it, believe it or not, already in August. Those are very, very sensitive ones to the later dawn. Yeah. And by October, they're really feeling it. And by December and January, those are the peak months are
Yeah.
December and January. You know, a lot of cloud, short days.
Those short days, they're hard.
This podcast is being scheduled at a great time
Yeah.
because it's still relevant to right now.
So you find that in March is when people start kind of turning the corner.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
turn the corner. You know, spring is not quite here yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also spring is a tricky time.
It could bring a lot of rain, which means a lot of clouds again.
It can. And there's a great poem by Robert Frost. It's Two Tramps in Mud Time. And he's talking about, you know, how you can be walking along and it feels like it's already May or June. But then suddenly a cloud comes over and it's like pushed you back 3 or 4 months earlier.
So
Coming
true.
from Rochester, you can probably identify with that.
Oh, yes. Only the cloud never quite leaves. Just it stays for a really, really long time. So yeah, because I'm noticing it's sort of like it's weird. I have the emotion of like hope or something that starts coming with all the sun. And I know that it's, you know, with daylight savings now, it's like, oh, and I get excited, like, oh, thank goodness, because I need that more. I need more light. I want more light. So I feel a difference this month for sure in March with myself. You can feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feel it.
I as you talk, I'm sort of feeling the spring. I'm seeing the snowdrops, you know, the crocuses beginning to poke their heads out.
Yes.
Some plant begins to flower a little prematurely and it gets the sap running in your veins, you know.
Yes, something's happening inside. I'm seeing the same thing here. And it's like, oh, everything's starting to bloom. And there's a memory, of course, of that means more sunlight. Thank goodness. So great. What else can you tell us? Is there anything that I might have missed? Because I feel very complete here.
Well, it's what else can I tell you about what? That's
Yeah.
the question. What do you want to know about? Because I can sit yakking with you for hours. Firstly, it's great fun to talk with you. And secondly, I've worked in a lot of different areas. So it's just a question of what you're interested in right now.
No, I feel like you've answered everything because, and I really wanted just to raise people's awareness around this because, again, I don't think a lot of people might understand that this is what happens to so many of us. So I'm hoping that this gives them some ideas for how to, you know, make it through the winter months, or again, maybe if it's even fall, winter, and spring months. Is there a certain, I have a question. Is there a certain light? Is there a brand that you like? You mentioned what size we need, but is there a certain light to stay away from or to go out and get?
No, I think you can go on the internet and you can find many different kinds. There is the Verilux is one brand that I like, the Verilux Happy Light.
Okay.
And the Carex Daylight. Those are two brands that I like. I tell you, you know, I know the focus of your interest has been sad and the winter blues, and I feel very gratified by that because that, of course, was my primary love and my primary research. If we do have a few more minutes, I would love to tell you a little bit about my latest crush, if you want.
Yes, please.
and that is this poetry that I have written and found, you know, to be so comforting to so many people. For example, I recently gave grand rounds at Cornell on the use of poetry for grief. You know, how people can use poetry to help themselves, and have included some poems that really talk about loving and losing. And, you know, so people have found a lot of comfort in that. Responses to nature, how to find meaning in life, or even the idea of getting older and approaching the end of one's life. These are all things that poetry can actually help. And I knew that I believed very deeply in it. And in every poem, in every little chapter, there are 50 chapters. I lay out the poem, then I give a little discussion of it, and then I take some takeaway points, things that you can actually take away, news that you can use, and a little bio sketch of the poet. But since you love Rumi and you love the Guest House,
I love it.
may I just read it?
Yeah.
And tell you how I've used it in that way?
And I just want to say, for me, poetry, I feel like when you really sit and listen, or when you're reading it, it just speaks to our soul. It's so deep. And it's funny, I opened up your book too. I just closed the book, of course, but the loss of a loved one. And I think that's such an important chapter and poem that you have here, because I have a lot of questions from people that ask about grief. But yes, please do read Rumi.
Yeah,
That's something.
and there is one about the loss of a loved one that's quite spectacular. But let's start with Rumi. It's
Yeah,
so
please. I love him.
universal.
Yes, yes.
It's called The Guest House.
Mm,
This being human is the guest house.
mm.
Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
Yeah, I love that so much. I do live workshops, I do live events, and that poem is the second page in the workbook that I give to everybody.
Really? What's on the first page?
Yeah. Well, it's just the title cover, it's the
I
title
see.
page of the workshop, and you open it up, and that is the first thing that you see when you start a workshop with me, because that poem just speaks so deeply to being human. And really everything I do with this adult chair model, I'm teaching people how to be healthy adults, emotionally healthy adults. And I firmly believe we need to stop pushing away and shutting down these emotions, and instead invite them all in. That's why I love that poem so much. Invite them in, be with them. People will ask me, what am I supposed to do about my anger? And I'll say, sit with it, get to know it. What do I do about my grief? Be with it, be in it.
You know what I love about it? Because we all know it's healthy to accept your emotions, but he's going a step further and saying, welcome them.
Yes.
Even if they really feel bad, like anger, shame, malice, they're teaching you something.
Absolutely.
So,
but humans just want to be happy. We just want happiness, and that's it. But that's not being human.
Yes. And that's not what real life is like.
And I say, as a human, we get to experience everything from love to fear and everything in between. And they're rich, beautiful emotions, every single one of them. We can't just feel joy and happy. It's all of them,
But
so
may
I
I
love
share
it.
with you another poem, which is really very much in line with this poem by Rumi. It's called Love After Love. You know it. It's by Derek Walcott. He was a Nobel Prize winning poet.
No.
Listen to this one. Tell me what you think.
Yeah.
The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life.
Oh, what page is that on?
That's on page 48.
Oh, beautiful.
Don't you adore that one?
Oh my gosh, I love it. Thank you so much for reading that. Love it. It's beautiful.
Of
Just beautiful.
course, they're so wonderful. Um, have you ever encountered the poem by Mary Elizabeth Fry, "Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep"? Do you know that one at all?
I believe that sounds, I feel like I know that. I do.
She was she was a Baltimore housewife. I
Mm,
had staying with them a refugee from Nazi Germany whose
mm.
mother was dying, and she was told she couldn't, it was too dangerous for her to go back home. So on a brown paper shopping bag, Mary Elizabeth Fry jotted down this poem that is
Mm.
now the most popular one to read at funerals.
That's probably why I know it. I'm like, it sounds so, the name, I'm like, wait, I know this.
It's
Yeah.
very short.
Yeah.
May I read it?
Yeah, sure.
Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am a thousand winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain.
Mm.
When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
Oh, I love it. I have heard that. It's beautiful.
She
Absolutely
was
beautiful.
amazing. I mean, what
Mm.
a piece of inspiration, you
Yeah.
know. There you've got someone you want to console. She's far away. I mean, I think of these people in the Ukraine right
Oh
now,
gosh, yes.
what they're going through
Yes.
and how terrible it is. And there
Yes.
was somebody who could reach out over the gap and use words, you know?
Yeah. Words are
So many
healing. But
wonderful
this is
things.
such a beautiful book, really. I love it. Thank you.
Anyway, you can see why I'm so passionate.
Yeah.
But
And
then
really, it is very healing to hear these. Beautiful.
passion has guided my work all this time.
Yeah.
Passion for light, passion for poetry,
Mm.
passion for helping people feel better, however that can happen.
Yeah.
And I am so thankful to you for
Mm.
having this conversation and letting us talk about things that mean such a lot to me.
Well, thank you for being on with me. You are a wealth of information, and I love all of your work and your books. So thank you for everything that you've done for all of us. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you being on today.
Absolutely. Take
Thank you.
care.